Only move from love, don't move from fear.
This is Mark Brand, a world-class chef on a mission to feed more than just stomachs. He's feeding hope. But behind the kitchen doors, Mark's facing a fight that most people don't see.
Polycystic Kidney Disease is multi-cysts that take over your liver and kidneys, shut down the function until they're no longer functioning. You know when you see somebody do an ultrasound, the woman's face just went white.
At 27, doctors gave him a brutal prognosis.
So the doctor goes through the results. You can no longer do any contact sports, and you should be dialyzing by 35.
So he did what most of us do when life throws us a knockout punch. He tried to outrun it.
I decided right when I got diagnosed that I had a death wish for a few years. Drugs, booze, let's just go. And I woke up one morning and was like, okay.
But sometimes rock bottom is the start of something much, much bigger.
And I got a bottle of Eagle Rare and I put it on the counter and I ticked it with a Sharpie. And after 100 ticks, I told everybody. And I had never received that much love in my life.
Today, Mark's rewriting his own story, and he's helping thousands of others rewrite theirs too.
So our work on the Vancouver's downtown east side, we do about 2,200 meals a day for people who are transitioning out of homelessness, hot meals made with love every single day.
This is a story about food, survival, and the radical power of community. Welcome to Sickboard. What's one belief or mindset that you had to completely unlearn to do the work that you do today?
Oh, so good. Great question. And I think it's a mantra daily, and it's a Rumi piece for me. So, going back a chill 800 years, which is only move from love, don't move from fear. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. So I move from fear pretty much my entire life. And I think all of us do. We move from scarcity, right? Of there's not enough to go around, so therefore I have to be competitive against the people that I adore to get into a place versus there's more than enough for everything and everyone, which is a fact, factual. We live in a time of an insane abundance. The systems create scarcity. So if I'm moving in love and I'm willing to give away or to forgive freely, consistently, or to be in somebody else's experience, really be in their experience, right? Not coming from self, but coming from other and saying, okay, what is informing the way that this person's interacting and reacting with me? My entire life shifted. Because we made a decision to go from for-profit business, 16.8 million on the books over 9 different cost centers. And when you're not challenging any systems, people love you. Golden boy can do no wrong. This is great, cool bar, cool restaurant, et cetera. As soon as I stepped out into impact and was this is a mess. And then I came from a place of fear. So I'm being informed by shadow and hate. So I'm angry at everybody. I'm angry at charities. I'm angry at government. I'm angry at the apathy of business and the general person. And it went horribly wrong for me until I started to switch it around and move from love. And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean genuinely every step I take is from that space. It's not tattooed on my body for fun. It's there for a reason. My entire existence changed. My energy changed. My health changed. My relationships changed. I drew things to me that I always wanted because I believed I finally deserved them. So I think that would be the one piece that so informs everything that I do.
Hey folks, if you wouldn't mind doing me a huge favor and just take a quick second to hit that subscribe button and of course hit the thumbs up button as well. And hey, look, if you don't have time to watch the video right now, I ask that you just take a second to add it to your watch later playlist. It would mean the world to us. And thanks for being here. All right, without further ado, let's get back to the episode. And what was the catalyst? Do you know, was there a moment, was there a day you woke up and went, I'm doing this wrong? Or, what opened you up? Because I think that is I think that's amazing. B, I think that when people hear that, they go, well, yeah, of course. Right. But it's a lot easier there's a difference between belief and knowledge.
Sure.
And so I think we all have the belief that that's the way that we should go through the world.
Right.
But
or belief in action.
Right. Totally. But to have the knowledge of being able to put that to practice, I mean, that's a whole other ballpark. And so, for you, was there a particular moment or a day or a sentence that was said to you or a sentence you said to yourself that kind of made that click?
Proof. So it wasn't one sentence. It was there's no way for me to stop looking at the proof that when I moved with love, things went well.
Right.
Then when I shifted from blame into understanding, things went well. And so when you see those things happening, right? And so I can give a specific example. We're doing Save On Meats, our big like social impact business. We're trying to cut a new way of doing business. And so I don't have many peers in this. I'm looking around. There's one cafe in the US called the White Dog. I met the owner, Judy. She's barely holding it together too. I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, how does this work? We're in $2.5 million of debt. All of the things are going poorly for us because I'm still moving out of a space of negativity and challenge. I'm still in combative mode consistently. Why aren't you doing this? Why won't you help us do this? Versus hey, here's the opportunity. This is where I think that you might fit. This is where I think that your company could help. This is where I think you would be a valuable team member. And those changes just start to open things up for us. And you have these like defining moments of, the bank's calling me saying, hey, we can't let this go on too much longer. And I've got a friend, acquaintance, friend is a strong word, an acquaintance who's a developer in Vancouver at the time. And I'm working with him a little bit. And he makes one phone call and says, hey, to the bank, we're going to put $50,000 in this account today. We're going to work all of this out. It's going to be fine. Now, there's no paperwork on that. None of that's happening. It's just like I'm moving from a place of we need to do this work and I'm moving in love. I'm not moving in like, please help me or desperation or any of those things. And those things started to be like the key markers of my life. It's like, okay, that man got his money back plus 10% interest. All the things started to work for us. And so in my design of everything we do in business, it's presenting an opportunity versus an accusation. What are those two different things? So moving in love, not fear.
In that like specific example of that experience of the bank being like, hey, ride's over. This guy comes in, this person that adds 50 grand to the bank. Is it the difference of having do you mean that in the sense that it's the difference in having a conversation of going like, hey, listen, like, hey, I know you've got some money. I'm in a tough spot. I need some money, versus going, there's this thing that I'm working on that is so important to this amount of people. And if this stops, then this thing that good people rely on to get good things, to have good things happen in their lives is going to evaporate. And that is the thing that conveys that pushes forward the desire from people to want to help and to understand.
Definitely. And you're letting go of outcome. I think there's a critical yes and there too, right? I am not in control of these situations. I can do my absolute best in all of the things that we create and that we do, and I can present the opportunity. And the traditional models of capitalism and failure within capitalism don't apply if you don't let them. And I'm not being facetious there either. I'm like, if something isn't working, we feel guilty by iterating. Like, oh, my concept didn't sell, therefore if I pivot, it looks like failure. No.
Right.
I mean, I could show you, I wish we had a stop motion camera for the last 15 years in the Save On Meat space. Radio station, window, token window, back to token window, butcher shop, to tasting room, to full commissary kitchen, to waste recovery kitchen. We are iterating constantly to meet the moment of what is needed and what's required. If you can do the same thing entrepreneurial or relationally, it just makes your life a lot easier. We get so attached to outcome of like, this is now going to be my story. And I think everybody in the room believes in manifestation. So you say that to yourself and you say that stuff out loud in the failure or in the fear mindset, you end up there. No question. You will definitely create that in your life. So when I say, I had all these good markers, I also had 15 years of really terrible markers in my life. Like, what are the things that I'm doing with myself that lead to these terrible results? Me acting so poorly, upsetting people, hurting people. Like, why am I doing this? Where is it coming from? And when I boiled it all down, it's coming from a place of fear and the root of like, I'm going to disappoint somebody, because you're saying it over and over again. I disappoint a lot of people. Turns out that's how that works.
So, I mean, I guess we'll dive into some of your work in a bit, but it's vast. Like you do, I don't know how you had time to even come in here today to record with us, because or how your brain is able to like handle the amount of stuff that you're up
You're
to.
like the Elon of social impact.
Totally.
Oh, gross. I think,
and by that I mean you do 50 trillion things.
I appreciate you. I think, truthfully.
By that, what he really means is
never me with them again. So you should be honest to your audience, and you finally let me in the door. I've been hanging out there for like a week, just like banging with coffees. You and I met all of us met at a dinner in the downtown east side, the unceded territories of Squamish, Musqueam, Snohomish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, otherwise known as the downtown east side of Vancouver. You came to one of my dinners with our dear friend, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, because he was like, hey, my friends are coming and they're interviewing your friend, Gabor Mate. And I was like, oh, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of this is cool. Who are these dudes? And then I put an episode on. I was like, oh, I with this so much. So not that I make time. It's like I finally got here because as somebody who lives with a chronic illness, I just felt so seen and heard by everything you were sharing. Look at the goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's on my neck right now. Like, there is so little space for men to be ill in any way, in any way. So to actually have a space to be able to contribute to that space, I'm just really honored to be here.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, you said you live with a chronic illness. You have PKD, which I'm not going to attempt to say what PKD stands for because I don't know. Actually, Polycystic Kidney Disease?
Kidney and liver for me. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right, sweet. Hey.
Nailed it, bro. In one.
Literally, when I said I'm not going to try, it's because I was like, I don't know what that is, and then I don't know, God or something just plugged it into my head. So what? Okay, well, we've never talked about it.
Sure.
We know someone very close to us who has it.
Oh yeah,
we've asked her to come on the show a couple times. She just always says no. You might know her too. We can talk about it off air.
Okay.
So what is it, and how does it affect you? And take us through what is PKD? And I know you have stage 3, okay.
Stage 3 right now, bordering stage 4.
How many stages are there?
5, and then in dialysis, I think is in 5. But again, and this will come clear very quickly. I dislike Western medicine and diagnosis in such a strong way. Polycystic kidney disease is exactly what it is. Multi cysts that take over your liver and kidneys, shut down the function until they're no longer functioning. It is, I don't know, rare is no longer the word because everybody's on the internet, so you can find people that have this thing, but right. It is underfunded as far as the kidney diseases go.
But probably a rare disease based on the amount of people that
Definitely.
have it. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom had it. My aunt had it. Their biological father had it and passed away when they were 12 and 15, I think. And my story with it is more their story with it, right? How it affects me right now. I'm 49 years old. I'm going to be 50 this July. I was diagnosed in Australia when I was 27. And I got diagnosed because I was going for my permanent residency to live there and spend the rest of my life in joyous bliss in Australia playing records. I achieved my dream as a DJ. I was a rap funk soul DJ. I ran nights everywhere. I was having the best time of my life. It was like the golden era of Australian hip hop. I was in the mix with everybody. Went to get my permanent residency, and when you see somebody do an ultrasound, and then, you're pretty in tune. There's just 2 people in a room.
Yeah.
And they're like going, and then the woman's face just like went white.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, and then you ask them and they're like, I'm not allowed to say
100p. And I'm like, okay, well, I know what I know.
Yeah.
My worst fear, my mother's worst fear, all of our worst fears has come true. So the doctor goes through the results and they're like, you can no longer do any contact sports. Drinking, don't do that. Don't have any stress whatsoever because you have hypertension because of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, right,
stress is a no-no.
And they're like, and you should be dialyzing by 35. I'm like, how the do you know that?
How old were you at this point?
27, 28.
Okay. And how old are you now?
49. And I'm not dialyzing. And so they tell me this and they're like, these are the charts and this is what it looks like. And they bring out these images that are done by like a Michelangelo style artist of cysts and kidneys, it looked like Texas Chainsaw Massacre shit. Like the images that they put in your head with diagnosis, the thoughts they put in your head with diagnosis of, might as well enjoy it now, but don't enjoy it too much and really don't do and like look after yourself. Oh. So my mom and my aunt, is that the visual?
Some kidney cyst looking.
Yeah, it's gnarly. My mom and my aunt ran, 2 of my biggest inspirations. Mom's name's on my neck. My first restaurant named after her. My aunt taught me to cook. They're from here. So my aunt worked at Hoagie's as a cook and a bartender and all sorts of stuff. Like they're Papa Gino's, like they were service industry royalty essentially. So it was in me, and I watched my aunt have the disease and not get that bothered by it from what I could tell. And my mom, they had obviously different stages, but my mom, it became a bit of her identity. I'm sick and people don't understand.
Yeah.
Nobody understands. Well, she's working 3 jobs and like literally barely sleeping and over caffeinating and never drinking water and like not eating properly, both of them. And so I got to watch those things happen and try to intervene many, many times. And as we'll talk about, like healthy food and water and exercise will save your life. But watching those things happen and then getting diagnosed, I was like, oh, my life is over. This is it for me, right? Like my dreams are done. I actually had to leave the country. Australia said you can do one of two things. You can sign away your medical rights for the rest of your life. And I was like, well, what would that cost? And looking at the numbers, no matter how successful a DJ I was,
like your medical rights as a citizen of the country, like
Literally.
you don't get the benefits of a citizen.
So if you got to dialyze, you write the check before you walk in.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford that. Or you can leave. And so I had to sell up everything and head out, and I ended up in Vancouver, BC. But I mean, on the disease, I think I really want to double click on the point of Western medicine diagnosis versus Eastern medicine diagnosis versus our own intuitive understanding of our bodies and how to look after ourselves. So much of it's here, as we all know. And so I decided right when I got diagnosed that, I had a death wish for a few years. I went way harder. Like I really dug in on like, okay, it's getting me anyway. So who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So drugs, booze, like let's just go. And I already had issues with both. So I was like turning that all the way up. And then there was a sort of a moment where you're like, or I wonder if I could do this better. Like I wonder if I took the best care of myself, what it would look like. What would my creatinine levels look like? And it turns out really, really good.
How did you like when you talk about Western medicine and Eastern medicine diagnosis and the intuitive human experience of like, what do I feel like I should be doing right now to take care of myself?
Right.
Do you lean to one more than the other? Do you try and take like a blend of all of those and mix them together into a concoction that feels right for you? And what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, we talk about personalized medicine has been such a buzz for the last like 5 or 6 years, right? Well, of course it should be personalized. Every single one of us is so beautifully individually different. And so you can't say, all right, you have high blood pressure, you should just take this. So even with medications, I would like get my blood pressure machine out and like try stuff and see where I leveled out. The doctor would be like, so you're taking 2 pills. I'm like, I'm taking a quarter actually. And I'm also hydrating a lot and I've removed most of my caffeine, et cetera. And she's like, okay. And so that was my relationship with Western medicine. And then I went to Eastern, and this Cantonese ex-oncologist in Richmond, BC, didn't tell her any of my diagnosis, didn't speak any English. And my acupuncturist actually took me. So we're sitting in this room and she grabs my the centering pulse, right? And she's sort of holding it for, 30 seconds maximum. And then she's like, in Cantonese, you have a kidney condition, you have this heart issue, you have this. I'm like, how the does she know all of that? And my acupuncturist very nonchalantly was like, 3,000 years versus 80 or 100. Like, right. Yeah, right. Of course. And so she's mixing me up herbs like I'm in Gremlins and like sending me home with these herbs. And she's like, you have to drink these today and you have to drink these tomorrow.
Like what? Like what kind of herbs are we talking about?
Oh my God. I have no idea. I could probably show you some images, but like when you walk in, it's just all medicinal herbs, traditional herbs. So she boils them in the back, puts them in jars. You have to bring your own jars and then sends you home with them. And she said, we can reduce your cyst size. I'm like, no. I mean, no, you can't. She's like, well, we could definitely arrest the growth. I'm like, no, you can't. Turns out pretty good. My creatinine is not spiked. That sort of stage 3 diagnosis has stayed pretty steady. But the way they speak about it is very nonchalantly, whereas Western's been telling me they're going to grow and they're going to be a problem.
Yeah. Because I mean, like we have this discussion so much, especially when we have people on the show who come into these conversations with a mentality similar to yours, which is like, hey, I think the Western sort of viewpoint on medicine has me over or is not, it doesn't get the whole picture. And the Eastern medicine, that modality has worked for me. And like, I think I speak for the three of us. Brian's not here today. When I say that I think both of them have their place, right? The issue with the Western medicine take is that they're looking at, for the most part, they're looking at every patient not as a person and a patient, but they're looking at them as just a statistic. And so when you take that statistic and you line it up with the rest of the statistics,
Yep.
They're assuming that you're going to become a statistical average.
Right. And they're looking at you going, well, most people don't actually take in enough water. So we're not gonna assume you're going to. And most people don't live their life where they're eating healthy food because we're just surrounded by processed food. So we're not going to assume that you are.
So we're right back on scarcity, right?
And nobody takes care of their body in a way where they're exercising 4 to 5 times a week. So we're not going to assume that you are either.
God forbid it be the Western medical field's job to tell people actually how to take care of themselves in a meaningful way and not just give pills.
Right, exactly. And so that's a problem.
Yeah.
I think it's also a problem when someone completely denies the Western side and the Western view.
Definitely.
And only takes in, they do their own research and they're like, oh, my kid has meningitis, so I'm just going to give him St. James wort to take care of it. And then their kid dies and they end up going to court for like neglect. And so where's the middle ground, right? And the middle ground is, I think it seems like you have a good sense of that middle ground, which is, okay, yes, I have a diagnosis of something. Certainly. And yes, some of these medications probably aren't going to work for me. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to take what I need to take. I'm going to figure out what works, but I'm also going to lean into this other side that seems to have some sort of knowledge. And so it's like a beautiful blend of the two in order to take control of your own health. The only reason I wanted to like state that is because I know from doing the show for the last decade, and I know there's a lot of healthcare workers, people who work in the field of Western medicine, nurses, doctors, anybody who works for like Nova Scotia Health. If you have that job and you're listening to this podcast, sometimes they'll hear even what you've stated right now, and they just start to roll their eyes. Right. And I want to just say, I just want to put this out there that when you hear that, if that is your initial reaction, just take a pause and ask yourself why you're rolling your eyes at that. Like question whether or not that's actually an appropriate response, because I think that is one of those, that response, that knee-jerk reaction is one of the issues that we're kind of speaking about right now, which is that it's denying the fact that there are multiple modalities that exist in terms of taking care of the human body. Some work, some don't. But when you are someone who has the like ability to take onus of your own healthy living, and you actually put effort into it, and you actually are consciously trying to live to the fullest degree, that in and of itself is so powerful. And Definitely. So to just brush that off right off the bat, I think is problematic. I mean,
something that I think about is like when you say a problem with Western diagnosis, I think about my wife and I, to have our first daughter, we did IVF.
Okay.
And I'm like a big data statistics guy. I'm like, let's look at the data. What does the data say? And when you get a diagnosis and they say you're going to be like, your life is going to be like XYZ over the next 10 years. And this is like how your disease is going to progress. They're saying this is how it's likely going to progress. And that's based on a whole bunch of data and a whole bunch of, dot plots and bell curves and everything.
Sure.
But the reality is that like, you're not on that dot plot yet. Like you're not on the bell curve yet.
Right.
You will be after a certain period of time, but like, that's not where you are yet. And something that seems that in this experience of going through IVF, that kind of shifted the way that I at least thought about data and statistics when it came to me as an individual or my wife as an individual, was that like, yeah, statistics are super helpful in a lot of ways until they're not.
Right.
Up until the point that it's about you. Once you are subject to be drawn into this statistic of whatever it is, they become a lot less useful, because the doctor says, well, you just turned, when you were 34 and we were going to do IVF, your odds were this,
right?
But but you turned 35 yesterday. And so now you've crossed over and now your odds have gone down by 20% to get pregnant. And it's like, if you just think about that from an individual personal level, you go, there's no way that that's true. I did not cross over a threshold, but the data says that you did. So it's like, so all of a sudden you've got to look at data through this much more scrutinized lens and go, how well is the average data actually speaking to me? And that unfortunately ends up being a big responsibility on the individual to try and parse through what a person who's got all the education and has the MDs and all the things after their name and go, how does this information actually relate to me?
Yeah. Healthcare is nuanced.
Yeah,
it's
because
not,
I'm not a statistic yet.
No.
You're telling me that stuff is going to happen, and maybe it will, because if on average it is what happens, then maybe I'll be average, and that will be what happens.
Certainly,
but maybe I'll be on the left or the right of the bell curve,
right?
And because when I look at the data, there's people on the left and there's people on the right, and that's why the bell curve exists. Because if they didn't. Then everyone would be at the top and there'd be no curve at all. It would just be a flat line and everybody would be in the same place.
Sure.
So like, you got to think like, you got to integrate the data and the averages and the likelihoods into your own
work that nuance
self.
Into your worldview of taking care of
which can be hard to do.
Yeah, totally. It's not easy.
And a mindfuck.
I mean, speaking of not easy and a hard thing to do, you were talking about at this period in your life, living in Australia, DJing, party life, drugs, alcohol, the transition to sobriety. That's not easy. I mean, I don't know if you would say you were like addicted but I mean, if, anybody who's taking an alcohol and using drugs and partying, there's probably some element of addiction there. Sure. For you, like, how hard was that step to step into sobriety, and how hard was it to maintain once you made that choice?
Definitely. And I'm going to loop back before I go forward, because huge and important and impactful part of my mental and physical health, ingestion. So we talk about Western, Eastern, all of the other medicines. Where Eastern really gets it right, and where we got lost from the 1940s on to right now, is we do not give enough weight to the impact of the food that we're eating to our overall health. And when I say not enough, I mean it's 80% of our existence. Like, I can take my blood pressure meds, which I've been on for 25 years, and I have to take them. Like, if I don't take them, my eyes start to feel crazy, and like, that's Western medicine and I need them. It's a distillation of Eastern medicine that is, being packaged by Western and sold to me. It doesn't matter. It works.
What do you mean your eyes go crazy?
So I start to vibrate behind, like, when my blood pressure goes too high, when you can't focus properly, like, that's one of my triggers to realize, I missed my pills today.
Can you see it? could I see it?
Maybe.
Like, would your eyes be like, oh?
I mean, I don't want to test the theory with you, brother, but we're around each other enough. We might.
Don't take them for like a week and come back.
I try not to do that. But if you think about those two things, like, when I go into a doctor's office, nobody once has been like, so what's your diet like? Or they're like, hey, you should eat 2.5 pounds of healthy vegetables a day. Like, it's the whole thing.
I mean, I think I've had people say that in med school, the nutrition is like it's like a 2-hour lecture in 4 years.
Yeah, it should be half of what you. So chef bias, of course, cook bias. That's what I do. We provide, just shy of 5,000.
I feel like it's a totally fine bias to have.
Good, because it's the whole truth.
Yeah,
and the more we avoid it, the more we feed into the machine. Literally, that's killing us. And when I say like killing us, I'm not like, it makes me a little grumpy or tired. No,
literally,
we're dying, cancer. Like, this is we're in the state of the union of processed foods. And we have to, by all means, avoid them, period. Not just for like our well-being and our health and our mental health and our relational status and our kids and the influence on the environment. Not for every reason outside of also our pocketbook. Like, it's insane. The project we started down the street down here, which I brought you some frozen meals from, my whole life goal is, the reason I'm 49 and not on dialysis is because of what I eat and drink. It's not like, it's also your blood pressure. Sure, maybe they play a small part in it, and maybe it's a big part, but food and beverage are it. Like, what you put in your body is what you are.
No matter who you are, it is a big slice. That slice might change depending on the person, but it's big no matter what.
Definitely. And like, anybody who's gone on a cleanse and just been like, okay, for 30 days, I took refined sugars out of my diet and I took caffeine out for a second. every naturopath in the world is going to be like, you scratch those two things to start and see how you feel. Scratch gluten and processed dairy for a second, see how you feel. You look different. You feel different.
Ooh.
Everything is right in the world. And you're like, yeah, but I love cheese. Well, cool. Just don't eat it all the time. I'll switch back over to sobriety, but that one just burns for me because I think when we talk about these things, we just avoid the whole elephant in the room, which is like, what are you eating?
Yeah.
And what are you feeding yourself and your family? And are you eating? And or are you rushing to get something processed at the moment and like do the thing, which is a detriment, not for a day, but for a week, you feel this stuff. It's like, oh, I feel hungover for alcohol, but I don't feel hungover from food. Yes, you do.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is a form of sobriety, right? Like becoming sober from processed foods.
From the
like
shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so critical. And so sober, I got sober for a lot of different reasons. And most of them were that I was consistently disappointing myself and everybody else around me.
Ooh.
And not in an overt way of people telling me, but in an overt way of like, I can feel like I'm really letting us down here. And so when you start to work in an impact space, you're thinking about the people you're in service to, and that's the center of the design. Like if I don't do my job properly, 5,000-ish people won't eat well tomorrow. If I'm the problem, because I'm the boss, then that's not acceptable. So also there's an inherent distrust that comes with somebody who battles with sobriety. And that's not overt societally either, but we will sort of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, oh, that guy, right? Like he likes to have a couple. And so that kind of trust, we need 100% trust in what we do to be able to achieve the things that we've achieved. And so I had to make a really hard decision for myself. It's like, you're disappointing yourself. You're having all sorts of terrible ideation around your mental health. You're ruining relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, family relationships. To what end? And this is not like I'm showing up Robert Downey Jr. in the Neighbors thing. It's like, I had 15 drinks on the weekend and now I can't quite get myself together.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do something, you really mean to do something properly, I was like, why wouldn't I just try? And so I was actually, I was doing a civic innovation fellowship at Stanford at the D School. To give that some context for folks at home, I just got out of Prince Andrew High School, like by 2 points essentially, and graduated. I don't have any secondary education. So I was presented this opportunity because I work in the sector so heavily to try and figure out how we might use technology at the intersection of poverty and homelessness. So I got the opportunity to go down for a year and be at Stanford and do this thing. And I got down there and I felt like such a fucking imposter that my drinking vamped up. I was hanging out at like the one dive bar in Palo Alto, drinking Manhattans at 5 p.m. with books in front of me, being like, I don't know really how to do this. Sitting on park benches with dudes drinking 40s and like freestyle rapping at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, because I couldn't deal with the pressure of like, oh my God, I can't lean into this person. I can't lean into this love. I can't believe I'm sitting here. This must be a long like imposter game, right? Like, who am I? And I woke up one morning and was like, okay, you are going to miss this. And you f***ed up a couple of times and you're going to miss it. And I got a bottle of Eagle Rare and I put it on the counter of the place I was living in off University Ave, and I ticked it with a Sharpie. And after 100 ticks, I told everybody. So I like white knuckled the first 100 days of sobriety and then told everybody. I was like, went on socials and was like, hey, I'm sober. And I had never received that much love in my life. And to give it some context, we had an Oprah Winfrey reality TV show. Like we'd had a lot of attention, but I'd never received that much love. There was a difference. There was like, I was getting notes from people being like, thank God. Like, I always wanted this for you. I'm like, God damn it. Why didn't you say something then?
I
like,
know, right?
Yeah.
where were you at? Like, I would have listened to you. No, I wouldn't have. No, I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And you knew damn well I wouldn't listen to you. So in that, like, I've fallen off the wagon more times than my fingers will count, right? And I think the thing is just like consistently getting back up and testing that sobriety in a way of like, who am I? And I am the most loving, the most in touch, the softest, the best version of myself. And I think what you may have been alluding to there, and I'll make a quick assumption, is what happens to your other relationships that are in that party and they go away.
Yeah.
And it's a very fucking lonely place.
Yeah.
And the judgment is 10x. So when we love the tall poppy syndrome analogy, right? So colonial hangover, UK, Australia, Canada. We love everybody when they're mid-level successful. But when they start to grow a little higher, that poppy gets up, we chop their head off.
Isn't that's like an Australian thing, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've all felt it. We know what that looks like. And you're And once you get a little bit higher, everybody always loved you, right? But there's this medium part where you're like, okay, you're not with us anymore. Sobriety is the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're getting sober and you feel great, et cetera. Well, that's a mirror for me and my habits. So fuck you and you're the problem. And I don't think I was ready for any of that.
Right.
Like,
It's crazy how we do that in so many different ways. Like I had a very similar experience when I left like competitive sports. When I left hockey behind, and was like, I'm not gonna play hockey anymore. I'm taking my yoga teacher training. I'm gonna help my mom open this business and run a yoga studio and teach and practice yoga. And it was like, yeah.
Like, I mean, like
Yes.
at that, that's what
In
like,
2010.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it was.
that's I didn't say it.
No, you're saying what
I'm saying
everybody
what
else
they
said.
said.
And you're going, okay, cool. Was still down to totally be friends, but
Right.
seems like you don't. So, all right.
Or maybe you should come out of the closet and talk to somebody.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if I'm triggering you that much, you should check your own sexuality
and,
out.
and it was almost like a, hey, like how dare you leave us chasing the dream?
I mean,
Without you.
you say that it's the loneliest place, but maybe it is. But like, in retrospect, was it lonely? Like, because obviously
No.
when that happens, you're going to start developing other relationships and other close contacts and other people that are in line with your vision and in line with the way that you want to live your life. So like, at what point did that sort of needle tip over to the other side where it was like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't lonely. This is
After it breaks, I mean, every Sufi Buddhist teacher forever is like, you got to sit with it.
yeah.
You got to sit with it. And so I'm sitting with all of the that I've done. And where's the escapism? I can't escape from my own damage anymore. So, in 12-step programs, I was not part of one, but it's like, make amends. And so I was like, okay, let me start to do those things. Let me start to reach out to the people that I've hurt and like make apologies, whether they're received or not. Overwhelmingly, absolutely received. And like more people just wanting, because you love each other, for you to be healthy. Like, thank you. And, friends are mended and these bridges are mended, but also you're not in this codependent circle of approval that we should have left in grade 4, which is like, I learned to love myself a lot. And I don't think I ever even liked myself prior to that, to be very honest with you. Like I had a lot of trouble being by myself or alone. I've got some childhood trauma stuff. I've got a bunch of things that I needed to work through. And you go on that journey alone. I mean, we're always ultimately that, but you go on that journey alone. You're like, I have to figure these things out by myself, and I have to sit with them, let those feelings process, and not run to like, okay, let me find a toxic positivity circle to jump to instead. This is my tribe. It's like, no, man, just like hold on, hold fast. I did my work. I got up every day. We got hit in the media a couple times really hard. I was like, put your head down, do the job you're here to do, take care of your teams, take care of yourself, and it's going to work itself out. And it was a couple of the hardest years of my life because I was like, where are my friends at? And so one of my best friends, I was like, hey, can you meet me for breakfast? And like, I don't get up until 11. I'm like, could you make a fucking exception?
Yeah.
And they're like, no.
Yeah.
Like, word, we're not friends.
Yeah.
Like, hey, could you meet? Like, and you reach to these things, whereas other folks in your life are like, of course, you want me to cook you breakfast? Like, the sobriety is more important than my habits. And so you start to learn a little bit about what works for you too. And like, if my health isn't paramount to you, are we homies? Because yours is to me. And I do just about anything to make sure that my friends live as long as they can and be around and be the best versions of themselves. And I think this is like the Australian part of tall poppy syndrome, as well as Canada suffers from this a little bit. I went to the US and did the thing, and we launched our charity down there, and we were doing lots of events and helping out folks and connecting them in community and feeding people. And when I got to the US, I was like, there is no limit here. There's no limit. There's no ceiling to what people believe is possible, much to their detriment. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But also, God damn, that feels good. Coming from Canada, where everybody's like, the is your motive? They're like, people need to eat. And they're like, yeah, but what's your motive? Like, people need to eat. And they're like, yeah.
Not buying it.
What the who hurt you? Who hurt all of us so badly that we don't believe in good-willed and good-intentioned people as a whole? Like that we have so much like, I don't know. And yet we'll support reckless celebrity wanton like idiots all day long. Like the classic meme of like, you will like Kim Kardashian's Instagram post, but you won't support your homie who just opened a bakery. Like, it's all interconnected, and it's this sense of self.
Yeah.
And so I think the sobriety piece, man, I was like, once I got through those bumpy, turbulent years, I was like, I'm going to live this life on 15, exactly as I want to, exactly as I should, for the people I love and for myself. And I need to stop worrying in any way about what anybody else thinks about it.
Can you talk a little bit about like some of the stuff like by the numbers with like the sort of like amount of people that the work that you've done and the work that you've been involved in have impacted? Like when we were at that dinner in Vancouver, and I can't remember what the numbers were now. I just remember being floored by them. Right. I just remember thinking, wow, like the amount of people that need help and the amount of people that you're able to help is really kind of blowing me away, especially coming from Halifax, much smaller city.
Sure.
And I just heard some of the numbers and went, and like, I almost fell backwards, like just the amount of people that are in need and the amount of people that you are able to help bring meals to, and help, keep sustained.
And before you answer, I mean, maybe working into that answer, just for the context for the folks that are listening that aren't aware of the work that you do, what is that work? Like how are you creating social impact? Sure. Where did that start from? And like, what does that look like now in terms of what you are giving back? Yeah.
And I may feel called, I've got a dear friend who's the greatest DJ of all time, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and he will always remind, we stand on the shoulders of those who come before us. And like we reach down, we reach up simultaneously. So let me center that as the energy to the response of my teams are incredible. And that's not just like, I'm scripted to have to say something like, I'm so lucky every day to get to work alongside people who white knuckle this stuff. Not like they're in the office Sunday at midnight, because they're not. We believe in really healthy live-work balance. But that they believe so deeply that there is a better side to all of this and that we can be a really impactful part of it by both showing, and we're not going to solve poverty. It's not the way that we're going. It's just going to get worse, but we can help a lot of people amongst the way. So my businesses and my charity all sort of intertwine in a way of what's the center of a better life, right? Like the charity's called A Better Life Foundation. Our kitchens are called Upward Mobility Kitchens. And those are not jargon. Those are things that we really, really believe in. Where do we create the impact that allows people to see both of those things? And food is us. So we work with everybody. Here in Halifax, we're partnered with Feed Nova Scotia, with North End Community Health Center, with the Preston Area Food Network, with everybody, because what they do is so important. Housing, mental health, resume building, like all of the things. And we provide food. And we provide food as medicine, which we alluded to earlier. So I started my first social impact business in 2009, and we took a 21,000 square foot butcher shop in the center of the downtown east side and reimagined it as a food incubator hub. And like I use those words specifically, not as jargon, but like how can we bring other people that believe the same thing we believe? And we hacked these meat lockers into offices, and we had urban agricultural projects in them. Like, all of it was insane. We had a boxing gym on the 4th floor and a meat locker and like artist studios. And it was how do we create the energy and community that we want to give back? And we believe in this space. And business was required more than charity. And I believe that business is always required more, right? Our charity works in a way that the most difficult projects that we can't partner with government or other agencies on, the charity will then work to fund. And you were at one of those dinners. Mm-hmm. But our main goal is to show people the way of all of this, right? It's like if we can inspire more folks to do social impact business that's really conscious about it, not a nice to have, but a baked in, not a like ESG on the back end, but this is why we do what we do. And the beautiful thing about the F&B industry that we work alongside of, adjacent to, as part of, and I've worked my whole life in, and particularly in the Maritimes, I'm just going to love up the Maritimes here, is we've always done that. It just is who we are, right? Like you won't see a single one of these businesses that isn't intrinsically involved in giving back. And they're just not on Front Street about it. And so my challenge has always been be on Front Street about it. not in a braggadocious way, in a people don't understand how big the problem is because you're chipping away at these things, these social issues piece at a time, versus, hey, we have to challenge government and to like really show up for this stuff. So our work on the Vancouver's downtown east side, we do about 2,200 meals a day, and we do those in 5 different sectors. One is a waste recovery program that we do in partnership with grocery. And so we'll take stuff that's like stale dated or day old, and then we as chefs black box competition it. What are we going to make today? And we make 350-ish extra meals for unfunded programs, particularly for women and children fleeing violence. And that gets delivered fresh, along with boxes that are designed specifically for those shelters to needs, wants, and equipment in the building. So those hampers go out every single day too. Then we do scratch-made meals of about 1,600 that are delivered to between 12 and 15 hotels or SROs, single room occupancy hotels, for people who are transitioning out of homelessness or who are living in an 8x10, hot meals made with love every single day. We have a token window that's on the front of that street.
Sorry, 1,500 meals a day
out of that kitchen. That's right.
And the other one, the
recovery meals is about 350. The token window is about another 150, and that's street side for people who are living on the street.
Fuck, man,
and they redeem. And then
so much.
Right next to you, right here, like literally 3 doors down, we do 1,500 meals a day for 10 elementary schools
in Halifax.
Yeah, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So we do that, and then we do a free breakfast program to Auburn, which is close to where you and I grew up, on the Dartmouth side, and so we do meals for the North End Community Health Center for the drop-ins for folks who are also living rough. We have a partnership with Hope Blooms, which is one of my favorite organizations for 10 years. That's family to us. They have a digital currency. They're using Solana to like empower people on the blockchain and through digital currency to load up. And so we'll be accepting that at our cafe for frozen meals, hot meals, sandwiches, etc. And I mean, I could go on and on and on, but that's how the 5,000 or 5,500 meals every day get composed. As an entrepreneur that had 9 businesses that were like sushi restaurant, ramen restaurant, like a live music venue, a gallery, fine dining, et cetera, all in a 3-block radius, I was like, what if I took this same know-how and just flipped all of this and all of my energy into doing impact business? So we own a brewery, an 11-acre farm that's an agricultural land reserve on the Sunshine Coast of BC that is I would say the agricultural version of Save On and the urban version. How do we employ people with developmental delays who are remotely, who are over marginalized? What does it look like to use wastewater retention? All of this is super exciting to me. And it boils right back down to good food is medicine. And the people who need the medicine most amongst us are the people who are struggling most and don't have the agency to choose and are typically being served terrible, terrible things. So how do we intervene and raise that bar? Not as an accusation, but with love.
Yeah.
Hey, that's cool. Chunky soup from Costco is a thing you can do. Or, hear me out, you could employ folks who need the job and we could make scratch-made food from Nova Scotia farmers or BC farmers stuff and feed people something to nourish them that will actually set their mind right and their body right so that they can feel strong about going forward in a meaningful way. That's the hypothesis, and it works. Like we're 12 years in, and we know what the numbers look like.
I mean, we have a lot of listeners here in Halifax. Folks might not be aware. Tell us about the new spot you opened up on Gottingen.
Sure,
right next door to me, which is kind of fun.
Literally attached.
You know, what is it? What's the purpose? And what can people expect if they pop by?
Yeah, and so I'll take 2 steps back to go forward. We came over 2 years ago, but I've been coming back here every year to do keynotes and work with government and hang out with folks. North End Community Health Center 5 years ago, I did their advocacy breakfast. And the ED over there, Marie-France, was like, when are you coming out? Like, when are you going to open this thing? And at the time, MP Andy Fillmore, who's a buddy of mine, who's now our sitting mayor, he was like, when are you going to come out? And I was like, well, what's going on with the library? Like, I'm thinking big. I'm like, where can we hack a space where people are at? And they're like, actually, that's on Mi'kma'ki or Mi'kmaq land. And I was like, oh, okay, what's the next space?
You mean the old
library?
Right,
so I've been playing with this idea for 10 plus years of like, it wasn't a matter of if we were coming to Nova Scotia, I was coming home at some point to do the work, but wanted to make sure. I hate duplicity. So if agencies are already doing work, I don't want to step in and be like, oh, you're doing it okay, but we could do it better and compete. Yeah. No. So where's a place that we could come? And so 2 years ago, we came out to really help address the homeless crisis with the North End Community Health Center. And we were feeding 902 Man Up out of the cold and the bridge, which is an ADSM project every day. as they built capacity in their own kitchens to then do that, because funding had come provincially. And so I say that to say then we pivoted to school food and then to helping some other folks out. And I didn't know exactly when we were going to talk about our work here. So I was like, it won't be for at least 2 years. So let's just keep quiet. We'll do some stuff on socials because I need to employ some people, but we'll be quiet about our work until we really know what we're doing. The Nook on Goderton, which most people know, was owned by Nicole Myers-Brooke and Brian Brooke, who I mentored into our token project that we launched in BC in like 2013, which is you buy a token, put it in your pocket. Somebody says, I'm hungry, hand it to them. They could come to our diner and like redeem it. That thing went crazy viral, and we mentored people from Buffalo, New York to Iceland and how to do this stuff.
Cool.
So they launched the program on Goderton in 2016, 2017 for coffee, bagels, and it became a community hub for people who struggled. As I'm doing my work in Halifax, we're connecting, of course, and they're like, hey, we're thinking about transitioning out of this. I'm like, this feels like a really good time to ask you if I could take the space over, continue the legacy that you have set up, but I want to like yes and it really hard. So we want to provide frozen meals at $5 to $7 that are scratch made for everybody. You can redeem them with a token too. We want hot food, fresh baked bread, beautiful coffee program. We want to create something that feels like you have agency and you're excited, and for everybody who's living on a budget, which I'm going to say is 88% of the population. All right. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to, and I don't want to slander any places, but folks that used to make frozen meals that are now owned by petroleum companies that are making food that's poisonous to people, but are a trusted brand. We need to get the thinking away from that and get people to eat really healthy food. So the Nook is going to be open 9 to 3, Monday to Friday to start, and then we'll get to 7 days by spring. We open this Monday. I know this is
awesome.
We're just really excited about it.
And are you keeping the name The Nook?
So it's called Upward Kitchen and Cafe at the Nook.
At the Nook. Yeah. Nice. Sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, like you, like I said, I live right next door. So I've been watching the transition.
Totally.
And it's a beautiful space in there. It looks amazing.
Thank you, man.
During the summers, I'm assuming you guys are going to have the front side windows open to be like handing out meals.
Oh, sweet.
Nice. And for the token program, again, so like, say someone listening to this is like super jacked up on what you guys are up to, and they want to, pop by and grab a token to hand out to someone. What does that look like? How does it work? You purchase a token.
That's right.
You carry it, you give it off to someone. Like, how much is a token? And like, what does a token give back to someone who might need it?
Yeah. So they're $5 for now. They've been $5 for a bunch of years, and we're trying to make the metrics still work. I think they're going to work. We're going to make them work. So you can buy a pack of them if you want, or you can buy them online and say, hey, I want to donate them to whomever, and we'll walk them to them. So Street Navigator came through today, who's awesome, a guy from the neighborhood who hands out pizzas to folk. He's really excited. He's like, I love giving people pizza, but I really want to give them food. So we gave him a stack, and we're going to start working together. If you're an individual, upwardcafe.com, you just go on, click on the link, purchase as many as you'd like, and we can give them to Hope Blooms, we can give them to United Way, we can give them to Salvation Army, we can give them to Shelter Nova Scotia, whoever you want, or you can take them yourself. Now, that's part of the project. What I'm really hoping, it's just a gift card, is that the same as you would load up a Starbucks gift card, you do that for yourself too. So students, people working in the F&B industry, people living in the square on unlimited income and everywhere else around, that you just come buy 10 or 15 on payday, you've got them. So you can exchange them for one of 7 frozen meals at any time, or a hot meal that's there, or one of 4 sandwiches. The pricing will be a little bit different if you purchase, but if you're using a token, it's going to be less, just to make sure everybody can access the food.
Man, Mark, I mean, like you're one of you remind me of, doing this for the last like decade, we've been very fortunate in having multiple instances where we get to sit down and have a conversation with someone who is doing just incredible stuff. And I've spent weirdly like a lot of time with astronaut Chris Hadfield, just through a various like bizarre projects that I just happened to be a part of. And, we had Chris on the podcast a number of years ago, and every time I hang out with an astronaut, which I know is like the craziest sentence to say, but like every time I hang out with an astronaut, I always leave that experience with 2 feelings. One is this like deep sense of inspiration and drive. And the other is this overwhelming sense of failure, because it's like, what the because who am I? Like this guy goes to space, and he, you know, like he's not a doctor, but he could give me surgery if I needed it. Like
he doesn't just fly the planes; he tests them and tells them what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
100%. And I feel to humble you quick.
And you know, Gabor is another one of those people where
Oh my
like
God.
you leave feeling so inspired, but also
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, I'm such a what a waste. Mark, you've been slotted into that same space. It's just like you're such an inspiration, and you're also such a piece of shit because you make me hate myself.
I'm aware of both of those things. And as somebody who sits in your seat and does my show, and Gabor being my very first guest on mine, and I've known him we know each other for almost 15 years now.
Oh, fucking G.
And like he comes on the show and he tries to Jedi mind me, and I'm like, bro, I know you. We're talking about you today. And he's like, yes, but Mark, for a moment, just remind you like what your childhood felt. I'm like, you know all about my childhood, motherfucker. We're not doing me today. We're doing you.
Yeah. He's
And
like, but the ratings. Think of the ratings.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't want to feel less than. And I think Gabor is amazing at that too, because Gabor is not about Gabor. He's about us. And if I can do my job in any way, that's the entire point. Like I stand on the shoulders of everything. We launched the Nook, soft launched it this week. And I will forever call our Lieutenant Governor Mayor Mike, because he's Mayor Mike Savage. He's not Lieutenant Governor. Like I had to figure out, I'm like, do I curtsy? I don't know what. We've been friends for so long. And he came to the opening and he surprised me with the King Charles Coronation Medal. And when he gave it to me, I got actually quite emotional. Not because I'm a huge fan of monarchy or royalty, because certainly not.
God, I just love the monarchy.
I was like, this means so much to me, but I immediately get flooded with every person who's been on this journey alongside or like leading, and I get to be part of my teams. I've designed them so well that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, manifestation, careful, there won't be a blip. They'll miss me, and hopefully I get to go to the tree like your friend, and it's going to be beautiful. I can't genuinely wait. But nothing is going to change. If anything, it gets a little bit stronger. So knowing how much space you take up in something, when I'm speaking about what we do, the we is with a capital W.
Yeah.
Right? We are in these groups together, and we work as a team of, let's call it like 45 nationally, who are in these signal groups together, showing pictures of the food and learning from each other constantly. Hearing stories, and I'll give you one. You were in the diner. We do this thing called Plenty of Plates. And Plenty of Plates is a corporate comes in, 10 to 15 people. They give us a sizable donation, and then they get the privilege to learn how to cook for 75 people, and then they serve 75 people from community, focusing predominantly women and children fleeing violence and our overrepresented Indigenous population on that side. This guy comes in the other night, 70-ish, real cranky, with a MAGA hat on. In the downtown east side, sits down, and Ash McLeod, my partner, amazing dude from here, but is the executive director of A Better Life Foundation, tells the story afterwards.
Ash was Ash emceeing?
Yeah. I mean, one of the greatest dudes on the planet, period. So he shares the story with the team because it's important as a leadership moment. So, and the guy's just being rude. And he's like, I got to take my bias out of this immediately and just be like, I have no idea what this guy's story is, where he sits on the mental health spectrum, what's happened in his life. Like, I've heard enough stories to know that this is like, I can't take this personally. And also like, where'd you get that hat, bro? So gets through at the end, is really kind, love, not fear. And the guy leaves and is just overwhelmingly grateful. Thank you for like, not reacting to me like everybody else reacts to me. Not in those words, paraphrasing. That's the job, right? And so I get to be, very luckily, the spokesperson of how dope my people are. Like that's the job. Whereas Gabor's like genuine genius. He's changed the way we think about trauma. My job is just to be like, yo, do you know how good we all are? Like all of us though, not some of us, not like we can't exclude the aunt that like, smokes export A greens and hates everybody. She's rad too, like because she also adopts 17 kittens a month, and like everybody does dope. It's not mutually exclusive, and I think that the more we can lean into our superpowers of like what it is that we do and how we show up and how we lead with love and not fear, man, like we're at a crux point right now. We got to figure this shit out, and the best way to figure it out is just by doing and loving, right?
How are your kidneys?
They're pretty good. Yeah, my creatinine level's decent. I learned from my mom and dad, like my dad would call him. He's like, we just went to the doctor and your mom's creatinine's up. I'm like, okay, how's she feeling? And she was on like, her side drawer at her night table, there must have been a dozen at any given time pills.
Yeah.
One pill to offset the other pill to offset the other pill to offset the other. And I lost my mom a long time before I lost her. So my kidneys are good because every time they try and give me something new, they tried to give me tolvaptan. They're like, you're going to pee more. I'm like, what else happens? And they're like, you might have more dry mouth. I'm like, you guys don't know. Like,
Yeah, and you might want to kill yourself.
I'm good, bro. Like, I'm okay on tolvaptan. What is that for? And they're like, well, for higher kidney function. I'm like, I'm going back to see the oncologist in Richmond, and we're going to do some of that. But also I need to exercise more and lose a whole bunch of weight. And like, I'm going to offset that with things. So my kidneys are great. Yeah. I'm deeply in love. My partner, Sarah, and I have been engaged for like a year and a half. We're getting married this year. Her and I met and like saying love in action, love in practice. My work I love very much, but now my partner is like the perfect mirror of like how much I love life and how much I want to live it. So every day I'm incredibly grateful that these kidneys are not only still kicking, but I'm still a chef. So I'm still tasting a lot of stuff. Or I'm like, I can't have the foie gras sandwich tonight, but maybe I'll have a little bite of it, chef. Like I'm grateful that my body is showing up in a way that is also helping other people not decide that their diagnosis is a death sentence.
Well, we're grateful for you and for this opportunity to have you in and have this conversation. Again, like I said, massive inspiration. And yeah, like the work that you do just makes, it's the reminder for, I think, all of us to just remember that there's good in all of us, and we're all capable of incredible things. Thank you. How can people find you and stay up to date with the work that you're doing?
At mark.brand on IG is my best place. I'm terrible at keeping up with the rest of the stuff. And thank you. I mean, I said at the beginning of the interview, but first of all, thank you for having me. But thank you for consistently creating the space for us all to feel like we're definitely not alone as men predominantly. And, you know, I think you guys should be getting that King Charles medal for the work that you do in and around demystifying like what it feels like and what it looks like. And it's okay not to be okay. So thank you for the work that you do and for having me.
Thanks, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. I look forward to coming back, and I hope Brian's doing okay.
Hell yeah. If he, I mean, you know what? If he isn't, you can replace him.
Half of him is inside of a toilet somewhere in liquid form. So